actually 90-minute sessions. My name is Scott Pierce. I'm with Facilities Partners, and today we're going to deal with a day in the life of a building engineer and all the mysticisms connected thereof. Anyway, first of all, I want to thank McDonald Miller and the Raffin Company for sponsoring the lunches and sound. And could folks from those two companies stand up and perhaps you'd like to say a couple of words? And Christine will bring a mic to you.
Where's McDonald Miller?
Don't have much to say, but thanks everybody for coming. Looking forward to it.
And Raffin?
Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Jones with Raffin Company, General Sue. Have Mike Harnden, Special Project Superintendent along. See some familiar faces that we haven't worked with in a bit, and that's good to see. I just wanted to thank Loma for bringing an interesting group together and looking forward to learning quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. You're going to put on a few miles today, I think. Also, I'm going to call out to HKA Elevator Consulting and Shearer Painting for their contributions. Would you mind standing up and saying a few words? Here's Christine again.
It's a good thing I wore my flat shoes today.
Hello, I'm Lee Chang with HKA Elevator Consulting, and I want to welcome you all here today. Thanks for coming, and I think you're going to learn a lot.
Anybody from Shearer?
And Shearer Painting.
Oh, right there.
It's right here.
There we go. Yeah.
My name's Andy. I'm with Sheer Painting. I'm here with Justin and Holly, who's going to be helping us film this event for Bowen. So just glad to see everybody. Hope everyone enjoys it.
Thank you, Christine. And finally, a huge thank you to Christine for putting this whole program together. It was a lot of effort. Appreciate it. So, what is a building engineer? He or she is a jack of all trades and master of some. They're expected to have knowledge of electrical, plumbing, HVAC, control systems, sustainability, fire systems, and security, not to mention a myriad of other things. They're expected to display professionalism at all times. They're expected to stay current with municipal codes, L&I issues, and RCWs. They are never bored. Every day is different. They're critical not only to the smooth operation of a facility and efficient use of energy, but they represent the front line of the management company. They probably do more for tenant retention than any part of the organization. They are depended upon by owners, property managers, and administrative assistants. They're expected to keep a cool head and know what to do in the midst of fires, floods, bomb threats, and general mayhem. Today, we're going to try to help you understand what's it like to be in the trenches and also give you an opportunity to ask some questions that have perhaps been nagging you forever. You know, things like, where's a building engineer when you need one? Or what the heck do they do all day? To help with this endeavor, these three gentlemen have agreed to be panel members to answer some questions previously submitted by property managers and industry partners. First, we have Bill Babbitt, just to my left. Bill Babbitt, Chief Engineer of Bentall Kennedy, started as an entry-level engineer right out of the Navy, 19 years with the same group, 3 different sites, one 30-story high-rise, a campus of 6 buildings totaling over 1 million square feet and 14 acres. Bill is currently with the U.S. Bank Center, 44 stories and 1 million square feet of office and retail. And over at the end, I'm sorry, out of order here, is Jeff Kozowski. Raise your hand. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff is the Director of Engineering at Wright Runstad & Company, where he has been employed for 30 years. He's been in the engineering industry for over 35 years. When Jeff began his career with Wright Runstad at a Bellevue high-rise, the engineering focus was mainly on the mechanical operations of a building. Over the years, Jeff has seen the focus evolve to energy management and sustainability. Jeff now oversees all of the managed properties' energy efficiency and carbon footprint reduction efforts. In December of 2010, under Jeff's leadership, 1201 3rd Avenue received LEED EV Platinum certification. Jeff enjoys managing, mentoring, and training up leaders in the field of engineering. In his free time, you will usually find Jeff in his woodworking shop. He's the father of 3 grown daughters and his wife of 33 years. Finally, we have Dean in the middle, Dean Carter. Dean brings to CBRE over 20 years of experience in the HVAC industry, spanning roles as a property manager, service technician, and account executive. He was LEED accredited in 2008 and has been applying his learning to a variety of projects, including investment real estate and the world's first clinic to receive certification of LEED Healthcare. He was born and raised in Detroit area and graduated from the University of Michigan, where he spent 15 years Dean began his professional career in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he spent 15 years as a service technician and project manager for a mid-sized regional HVAC services company and carrier dealer. When he's not working, Dean enjoys fly fishing, all things outdoors, and spending time with his wife and young daughter, Sonia, 6 years old. Just a little bit more about myself. I've been connected to building engineering since 1987, and have fulfilled the roles from maintenance tech to director of engineering. I started Facilities Partners in 1997, and we've been providing temporary and permanently staffed engineers to this day. So, on to the questions. Each panel member has chosen various questions that have been previously submitted. I will ask the question, and that person will answer to the best of his ability. I'm also encouraging the other panel members to add comments if they would like to. Pretty straightforward. So they're kind of categorized. The first category is general work-related questions, miscellaneous. So Dean, you're first up. Why don't all building engineers have their electrical 07 license?
Hello, everybody. Good question. The reason that all of the building operating engineers don't have their license is for a variety of reasons. First of all, you may not need an 07 licensed engineer, depending on your organization. You may have a system where you have specialized teams that work either plumbing or with tenant improvements, or you may have a specialized electrical team, and just that team might need to have the license. The other reason is if your engineers are employed by the building owners, then they don't have to have an 07 license either. But beyond that, there are situations where you may have engineers that have joined the team and as trainees, and those trainees work under a supervisor who has an 07 license or even an 01 license, and they need to log their hours. It's fairly stringent what it takes to get an 07 license. They will need to have 4,000 hours of well-documented experience in the field. So that can be very difficult. All the time has to be logged and approved and then submitted to the state, who then scrutinizes it even further and can deny hours if they have any questions, or certainly can audit those hours as well. So because of that, it can be very difficult. You can easily have a situation where you have excellent electrical engineers with excellent electrical ability that work under a supervisor, but will have a very difficult time, depending on the amount of electrical work, to get that actual 07 license and be able to sit for the test to pass. Yeah, in the back, go ahead.
What is an 07? That's not a professional engineer's license, that's something else?
So the Department of Labor and Industry has required a license called an electrical 07 specialty license, which allows engineers to do electrical maintenance in buildings. It's not a full electrical license where they can install fixtures and luminaires and switches. People with electrical 01 license do direct replacements, lighting maintenance, replacing ballast is probably one of the biggest items that you might find an electrical 01 trainee or license holder doing.
Okay, Jeff or Bill, would you like to add anything, or are we okay with that? Good. All right, next question is to Bill. What determines if they do repair and maintenance in-house or sub it out?
Okay, thanks again, everybody, for coming. The main drivers, whether we contract it or do it ourselves, typically budget and the time available. If our staff is swamped with our routine maintenance and repairs, or if we have emergency projects underway, we're more inclined to call on our contractors for assistance. But also, if we know we have a large project on the horizon, even if it's just routine repair, just a lot of it, we often attempt to budget for it and hire it out. Some crews around the town are better staffed than average, and they do more in-house. Some are real lean, and they literally contract almost everything they do. So it just depends on those circumstances.
Anybody like to add anything? Any questions? Next up, back to you, Dean. Are you self-performing HVAC maintenance, and why?
So we are self-performing a large amount of our HVAC maintenance. The reason we do that is because I like to have all of our engineers have hands-on experience with the equipment so that we can take care of most of the problems quickly. When the client is uncomfortable, either too hot or too cold, that becomes a high priority for us. And being able to respond with an engineer as opposed to waiting for a vendor who is probably very busy during a cold snap or a heat wave lends a lot to our customer service. So that's the main reason why we do that.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Bill, back to you. Jeff, one of these days we're going to get to you.
No problem.
Okay, what are the most time-consuming issues that you deal with on a regular basis?
And most likely in our position, it's paperwork. We have internal maintenance programs, extensive budgeting processes. A lot of times we have multiple owners. We have to, get budget approval and give updates. A lot involved with that. Environmental and safety documentation and training. 07 licenses and other qualifications we have to track. Energy Star and LEED qualifications that require ongoing involvement and documentation. This is also why your chief engineer's desk may not be as tidy as you'd like it. Bring a picture of mine for an example. All of us probably started on the mechanical side of things. It's probably why we got into this business. And I'd like to say the transition from a working engineer to a manager is a really big transition, and it's pretty tough for some of us to leave our tools behind and sit at a computer all day, so make that note.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Dean or Jeff, you want to add anything? We're good? Okay, Dean, back to you. What keeps you up at night? And these are job-related issues, of course.
Yeah, my notes say here, say electrically speaking, so one thing I worry about while we do normal maintenance on our switchgear and electrical main services, the utility often does not. And so many of you have an electrical vault outside your building and have never seen what it looks like on the inside, or that transformer room that you don't have a key for, but the utility does. we had a situation at one of our clinics 2 weeks ago where the utilities vault, which is located in the parking lot outside the building, actually exploded. And so we did not have power at our clinic for some time. And the root cause of that was the conductors basically corroded and shorted out against each other. I think it was 1,200 volts worth. So not knowing what kind of maintenance the utilities do can be something that you wonder about in the middle of the night.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Jeff, anything? I know there's things that can be. Anything you want to add? Okay, great. All right, Dean, you're still on. What's your biggest challenge on a daily basis?
Well, I think our biggest challenge is coverage. We have 20 buildings that our team of 12 engineers are covering at any one time, and most of them being clinics and the rest being administrative areas. So in each one of those buildings, we can experience high priority work order at any time, and they can range from too hot, too cold. In some situations, if it's too hot in a lab, for example, they can't do their tests. And light fixture goes out in an exam room, that can be a priority one work order. So getting our engineers to be able to quickly respond and keep operations going can be very difficult on busy days, especially with the traffic around the Puget Sound area.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Jeff, we're finally getting to you. What is your biggest challenge when working with the property management team? And there's a second part. What can the property management team do to help make your job easier?
Okay, well, first of all, I talk with my hands, and that doesn't work when we're holding this, so I apologize. I will try to stay still and still communicate here. I think the biggest thing when I'm working with property managers is, I call it a love language. And it's probably not the thing to call it with your property manager, but it's really a skill language. It's something that, developing that relationship so that when you two are speaking, you're connecting. So an example would be, at 30,000 foot, I can be up there and my property manager can be up there and we can say, everything's great, we're service oriented, we're here doing a job, we all have the same goals. But then, when you dig down to the weeds, I'm in there talking about engineering stuff, and my property manager's going, what? So bringing that kind of at a level that they can understand, and I think it's really just that language. It's like any relationship that we have with people. It's trying to figure out a relationship where we can talk, and that's my goal with my property manager is. I need to see in their eyes that they're willing to listen. I need to see that every once in a while they're going to raise their hand so I can find them through the weeds, right? And see, oh, I hear their voice. Okay, they're responding. There's nothing more irritating than your property manager to say, I don't get it and I never will, so just go with it. Because at some point you got to talk to somebody about it and get approvals if it's a project that you're doing. So that language is so important with a property manager, and it's setting up those expectations so that you can meet those goals and communicate with each other. What was the other part?
So what can the property management team do to help make your job easier?
Yeah, I think the key there is to listen and ask questions, and I think that's the key, is to communicate at I try not to get too technical, and they try not to stay at the 30,000 foot level.
I'd have to add that probably increasing your budget by 100% would be helpful too. Good luck with that. Okay. Dean?
I could add something to that.
Sorry, Dean, you want to add something?
Yeah, to add to the help that facility and property managers can give us, I'd like to hear about problems before they become a problem for our customers. So in our organization, the facility manager is the liaison between the customer and engineering. So an ongoing dialogue of what the customer needs is great for us to be able to be proactive in our work. And also it helps if the facility or property manager uses our work order system as opposed to going directly to an engineer to try to maybe expedite things. Our system works in a way that we can do that by prioritizing the needs, and it keeps our engineers working more efficiently and not having differing perspectives on things.
Okay, thank you, Dean. I just want to mention, we're going to try to have a Q&A period at the end, depending on the timing, so I certainly want to include you all into this as best we can. Dean, we're back to you with another one. How do you balance repairs and ongoing maintenance with deferred spending?
There's a couple ways we do that. We have a planning and scheduling system where, and I'm sure many do use a computerized system, that we make a list basically of all our equipment and all of the maintenance that has to be done either on a quarterly or annual basis. That could be anywhere from filters to belts or a more technical inspection of the asset. And we present that to our client so they know exactly how much to budget for to keep their assets working properly and lasting longer. So they find that if we do not defer the maintenance and spend the money, that in the long run, it costs much less to keep that running and keep their operations going and seeing patients. And then on the capital side, we do the same thing with all of our assets. And this can be anything from a roof system to a chiller. We have estimated what the lifespan is for each piece of equipment and what the future replacement cost will be, and how we can make that piece of equipment last as long as possible by doing the maintenance. And that plan all gets wrapped up into, we're looking at a 20-year window, and that allows our clients to do their capital planning and not have any surprises.
Okay, Dean, I have another question for you. This is kind of subjective, but what are the technologies that you're interested in the most?
So when I look at buildings, I want to make sure the buildings and the systems are running as efficiently as possible. And one of the technologies that I'm sure everyone is familiar with is the building automation system. So having the capabilities of being able to diagnose and perhaps even correct problems remotely saves time for those troubleshooting activities. Going along with that, sometimes hand in hand, is an energy management system that will alert you to a spike in energy usage so that you can correct the problem, if it is indeed a problem, before you get that electric bill in a month. Very interested in wireless communications, being able to communicate with our people in the field efficiently, even to the tune of sending building diagrams and so forth. Our engineering team can get work orders on their iPhones now, but to take that up to the next level of a tablet where they could possibly see building drawings and manufacturer OEM documents fairly easily is is great too. The technology BIM, Building Information Modeling, is a great tool. It allows you to see 3D images of your buildings and being able to find that valve or that switch quickly, or to see where there might be conflicts in piping and electrical systems. Some of the other systems that there are software programs that help you organize your assets as to criticality. So you may not think about all the things that can shut down your business unless you go through a process and keep track of it with some software. For example, you might not think about that storm drain in your parking lot too much, but if that plugs up and your parking lot floods, people aren't going to come into your business. So a system to prioritize those is very important. And those are the main ones.
That pretty much covers it. Thanks a lot, Dean. Jeff, how high of a priority is energy conservation?
Well, I'm just going to make a real quick comment about technology. I used to always want technology that made my job easier. There's no such thing. I know that, and I know a lot of people try to sell me on that, but what it does do is give us more information. We have so much more information with technology than we used to have. So even with the energy management systems and the work order systems, we can start putting together some graphs and see where our weak areas are, where we're not taking care of things. So on that side, it's great. Energy management is really it. It's what I focus on the most. For most of us, I think janitorial is our highest cost in our buildings. Second cost is usually electricity. And electricity is something that you can make a difference in, and it shows. In other words, you can show your savings, you can show your KW savings. Other things we do, my engineers are very efficient, and they go up and replace bearings and do great things really fast, but nobody really ever sees that. So energy is something that you can focus on. So for me, it's number one, and it's something I talk about with my group as well as my engineers almost weekly in our weekly meetings. We're always focused on energy savings. How do we continue to watch what we're doing and focus on saving energy? There's a lot of waste in buildings, a lot. And like they always say, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, but there's other stuff out there too that will really take you, kind of move you forward. I always feel like if you're not moving forward, you're probably not doing the building any justice. So I want to make sure my owner's happy with what we're doing. So I always want to make sure we're moving forward, setting goals, and saving energy.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Dean, back to you, sir. In regard to building systems, what upgrades can be made to increase operational efficiencies?
So there's a lot of building systems, of course, but I think the two systems where you can probably get the biggest bang for your buck is your heating and cooling system and your lighting system. So what we try to do for the lighting system is take full advantage of utility incentives. There are a lot of great incentives through Seattle City Light, and Puget Sound Energy has a great LED system where you take your electric bill down to a supplier and they will give you LED lights, and or if they're a higher wattage, they end up being 75% less than the actual normal price. So those things are great to take advantage of. And I think the other thing is a lot of the buildings have hydronic heat pumps, water source heat pumps, and there's a lot of opportunities if if your water source heat pumps are at the end of their life cycle, replacing them with high-efficiency heat pumps, putting speed controls on the water pumps so that you can vary the flow of the water and reduce the pump energy, and also control the amount of fresh air you bring into the building is a huge savings. And you can do that with carbon dioxide sensors to control just how much outside air you have to heat or cool, and still provide comfort ventilation for your tenants. Those are really the biggest two I can think of.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Now, we're going to leave this section with one last question, and it gives you a chance. Jeff, you commented on this already, but what more do property managers need to understand that would help with your job? So if you have any other comments, Bill or Dean or yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to say that just be aware that we are usually multitasking a great deal of projects and obligations, and sometimes a priority to us may not be a priority to the property management team, vice versa. So when something needs our immediate attention, please let us know so we can refocus and prioritize. That's something we do continually. It's part of our job. But like I said, something we might assume is not important could have a huge impact to a leasing deal or something that we're not even thinking of. And it can be a simple question. Maybe in passing you ask us a question. Okay, I'll get to that next week. But it may actually be a prospective tenant that's asking that. So let us know why you need the information, and that helps us prioritize.
Okay, Dean, anything to say on that?
I think I added before.
Okay, good. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about customer service, a couple of questions. First of all, to Jeff, how do you handle or prioritize customer service complaints?
Customer service complaints.
You don't get any, right?
I don't think
You never get
Thank you, too kind. I took a seminar years and years ago about complaints, customers complaining about something. And the statistic, I think, has changed, but it's probably gotten worse. For every one person that complains, there's 9 others that didn't call you. So that, to me, is a very important complaint. So when I hear a complaint, I always try to figure out, is this a global problem? Are other people feeling this? I'm not hearing it. I mean, how often have we heard, how many people have complained? It doesn't always work that way. There are a segment of people that do not complain for whatever reason. Too busy, life goes on, they don't need to complain. But then there are some that like to talk about it. Those are the ones you really should be listening to. And I think for us, that's probably the key to everything. Our tenants in the building pay my wage, and so I'm here for them. And so I look at every complaint as a legitimate complaint, and it's important to acknowledge that and talk to them about it and learn more about it and make it a big deal. And we try to do that. If we get, for instance, complaints about temperature, we have a person that goes up, deals with that complaint, follows up the next day. If they're still unhappy, then we make sure we get 2 or more engineers involved so we can have kind of a discussion about what's going on the floor, what's going on in the air handler. Maybe it's a bigger problem. Not all your complaints are individual. They could be the one person talking.
Well, needless to say, this is a huge component of tenant retention as well. Dean or Bill, do you have anything to add? Okay, Dean, this is to you. How do you personally practice customer service?
Well, thankfully, I have a great team of engineers that are very customer-oriented, but occasionally a complaint will reach up to my level where I usually will then meet with the customer, talk about the problems, and we also like to document all of our complaints as well. And we keep track of what the solution was sometimes we have indoor air quality issues, and someone senses an odor, and we take those very seriously, as with other complaints, and we have a process form that we go through, checking the ductwork, checking even the office plants can sometimes grow some mildew in them. So we will follow a process that either gets to the root of the problem. In most cases, that will take care of it, and we don't miss steps. We do the same thing with hot-cold calls as well, following a step-by-step procedure that is documented and uploaded to the work order system. And what I like to do is I visit my buildings on a regular basis and meet with the clinic operation manager, and we'll just chat sometimes, and sometimes there are no complaints to talk about, which is great, but it keeps that connection going so that they know that they can come to me when there are actual complaints, and that action will be taken.
Okay, thank you, Dean. We're going to move on to the next section, choosing and working with a vendor. Bill, the first one's for you, and this one's near and dear to my heart because as a company I've responded to many RFPs. So the question is, we are always told to quote apples to apples, but RFPs are so vague at times, contradictory, and open to interpretation that we think apples to apples is a joke. You are just going to take the lowest price, yet we hear you want top-tier quality vendors. Why isn't more effort put into producing quality RFPs with decent scopes of work?
Yeah, I'm sure several contractors out there are perking up on that one. My experience with RFPs and bids of all types is that we, the folks soliciting the bid, we encourage as much detail as on your proposals as possible. I have often stressed to bidders that we needed the detail only to get a few short couple sentences stating, we'll do it for this much. So it kind of turns the table on us. Then we have to revisit the pricing to squeeze the details out. Quite often the contractors know the details right off the top, so we wish they'd included up front. But on the flip side, we also realize that some of these pricing exercises we put you through takes a great deal of your time. It's a huge amount of effort, and we do understand that. I personally try to be conscious of that. I'll often ask for a base bid, just the basics, with hopefully a well-defined scope, specifications, but then try to leave it open-ended for suggestions. So if a contractor comes up with a great idea, better solution, or a way to save money, I encourage that to be included as an alternate. So it gives us options, because the way we are approaching may not be the best solution. You may have better ideas. So even with an RFP, I try to leave it open-ended. Maybe that adds to some vagueness, but it's an effort to make it open. When compiling an RFP, I'll solicit input from the contractors that will be bidding the work. No doubt you've seen hundreds of RFPs, so sharing a few pointers or often overlooked items with us to include in the RFP up front could help avoid confusion or missing the items during the process. It's not always a given that we go with the lowest price. If your pricing includes a great deal of detail, we see that you've not offered a lot of exclusions, then we are likely to see that your pricing is a more complete package. In fact, we often scrutinize the low bid more. None of us want to see change orders for items that we assumed were included, only to be stuck once a project starts. So I would say that if you get an RFP and there is a vagueness or a contradiction, that you bring it up. And quite often when we're doing projects, if something is brought up, then we'll turn around and share that clarification with the entire group, because likely the other contractors are having the same questions. So I think I would encourage a two-way street of communication.
Hey, Jeff or Dean, you want to add to that at all?
I was just going to add that on those kinds of responses, really kind of what sets you apart from someone else. And I think Bill was saying, more complete list. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? And oftentimes we go to vendors, contractors, service providers for their expertise because we don't know it all. And so we're wanting to learn the process. I'm required to go out to bid oftentimes, so I go out to bid and I get 3 bids and I start reading through those. And I'm always impressed with the one that throws a whole bunch of stuff in there about why they're different and have you thought about these things? Because these are going to happen. And oftentimes that's why the bid's maybe a little bit higher. And like Bill said, we don't like change orders. Those are probably the most difficult things to work through.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd like to back up the notion that we don't always, we may prepare a basic RFP, but we are looking for good ideas and suggestions from the vendor on how to do it better, save more energy, and those sorts of things. So when responding, calling those great ideas out is very important to us.
I have to apologize, maybe some of us here don't know what RFP stands for, but obviously it's request for proposal. Should have mentioned that right at the beginning. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we could just about do a bonus seminar on our RFPs, and maybe we should consider that one of these days. Okay, Jeff, this next one's to you. What is the one thing that bothers you most about dealing with vendors? And the second part of that question, what is the one thing that you most like about dealing with vendors?
Well, first of all, I was always taught to know your audience. How many vendors do we have in the audience today? How many property managers do we have in the audience? How many engineers do we have in the audience? And all those other categories, there's a few, right? I'm sorry, say the question again.
What is the one thing that bothers you most about dealing with vendors? And part B is, what is the one thing that you most like about dealing with vendors?
Oh, here it is. This is great. A vendor wants to see me, and I decide to have coffee with that vendor. And we sit down, and that vendor knows nothing about our company, about me, or about anything. But they want to sell me the widget, they want to sell me the service, because I need it. And there's nothing more irritating than having to try to step back from the vendor convincing me that I need their product, and they don't understand who we are and what we do. And in today's age, I mean, come on, internet, websites, tells you everybody's history. I can go on Bentall and I can find out everything I want to know about them, their history. I can even pick out some facts so when I go interview with them, right? I can throw some stuff in. We've all done that, interview with someone. So vendors definitely need to do their homework. And I'm always impressed by a vendor that walks in and says, hey, you guys build this, you guys do this. I know your company's a developer first, and I know that's important. Because it just helps that dialogue move forward so that I can let you know how important the product that you're talking to me about is. Because don't you want to know? You want to know the priority of your product, right? It can be a great widget, but it can be pretty low down on the list. So you want to understand a little bit more about me, just like I want to understand a little bit more about you. So the second part of that question was what I like about vendors? Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely knowing who they're talking to. And then the other thing is when we sit down, asking a lot of questions. I mean, that is invaluable, right? Everybody likes that. Everybody enjoys sitting down with somebody and they ask you questions all the time. Don't we all enjoy those conversations? We walk away and we kind of feel good about, I shared a little bit of myself. It's the same thing. I'm getting to know a vendor. Relationships are important to me. That's what we want.
Okay, Jeff, thank you very much. Bill, this next one's for you. What qualities do you look for in the general contractors that work in your buildings?
We look for team players in both our general contractors and our subs. We all take pride in our buildings, and we expect you to as well while you're working in them. We expect the GCs to monitor the subs, be on site whenever work is occurring, and take responsibility. And again, communication is the key. If our GCs are communicating with us well, letting us know of any issues they're finding as they find them, not a week later, that's appreciated. For that reason, we at Bentall have established a list of approved contractors. It doesn't necessarily mean they're better than others in the field, but we hope to establish good relationships with those on the list. We typically limit the trades to 3 or 4 contractors. In the event we discover that the relationship isn't working out for either party, it's a list that we can edit. So again, it's looking for the teamwork, taking appreciation for what we're trying to do in our buildings.
Thank you, Bill. Dean, this next one's for you. In an effort to be more conscientious of the work environment, this is really kind of off the beaten path. In the effort to be more conscientious of the work environment, what is the most hindering thing a property manager can do for you, and what is the most helpful thing?
Well, I think it goes back to some of the questions we had before. But I think the main thing is communications, working together hand in hand with engineering, realizing that we may not be able to respond immediately to every request, but that we'll certainly try to get to their priority as soon as possible. And again, I think it's just communication, letting us know what's going on with the client. Those things are very important.
Okay, and I apologize, that should have been in another section. Bill, we're coming back on track here. What can we do upon arrival, this would be from a general contractor, and while working within and on your building, that would make our presence easiest on you and your tenants?
Again, the biggest key for me is communication. Keeping us posted on your schedule, keep us updated on your progress, bring any issues to our attention immediately. And always keep in mind that we have to communicate with our tenants. You know, if it's working in their space, we have to keep them updated. So few surprises is greatly appreciated. Please also be observant in the course of doing your project. If you discover something you feel is not correct, we appreciate you letting us know. Don't just say, well, that was somebody else's problem, I'm not going to bring it up. We have established standards in our buildings, guidelines for how we expect all the electrical, mechanical, everything to be done. So if a contractor comes across something that wasn't done that way, we'd appreciate them letting us know so we could hopefully get it fixed. But again, communication, it's very frustrating to come in on a project, maybe they've left for the day, and you see something that's left a mess, or a panel torn open, they didn't safe it off. Because then the phone calls start, and it's not a good situation. So I just say communication.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Jeff, this is the last question in the vendor section. If I want to solicit your business, when is the best time to call? Is email better, phone, in person? During the day, is there a time that is not as busy for you?
All of the above. I love sitting at my desk and answering phone calls. I thought about that a little bit when I read that, and I thought, I wonder if you guys, what do you find more successful if you're trying to communicate with somebody, whether it's a cold call? I mean, do you find emails the best? Do you find phones the best?
I think email. Email, so you can take your time. If you have something you're prioritizing on, you could focus on that and come back to it.
Yeah.
Unless it's an emergency or something.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, the more I thought about that, I really enjoy an email with the person introducing themselves, kind of telling me what their service is. I prefer not the form letter, because there's other chiefs in my company get the same letter, so we're going to realize it wasn't really written to us. But, tell us what you do, what you're interested in, and see if there's a time we can get together. A good time. Coffees are always pretty easy for me. So I think from my standpoint, emailing me kind of Jeff, this is what we do. I'd like to meet with you. I'd like to talk to you and let you know what's going on. I know some vendors, they're even in here today, Some of their most successful is sending me an email saying, hey, when we get together, this might not be on your priority list, this might not be really important to you right now, but I'd like to, at some point, sit down and talk to you. And then, at some point they follow back up, and I'm not always great at responding, but I hear it, and I see it. So, responding back, hey, let's get together for some coffee. And some people say, hey, I know you have a relationship with this vendor or this person, but I'd like to make sure you know I'm out there and I'm available to you. So to me, that's a really good way. And I don't know about you guys, if phone calls tend to stack up during the day because my day's pretty well packed, whether I'm either out of my office or doing something. Bill said a lot more paperwork by us nowadays, and that requires us sitting there focusing. And I like to get pulled away, but I need to focus. So.
And I think maybe it depends on how many emails one gets in a day. I'm typically getting 120, and if you think about email as a conveyor belt, it comes on the conveyor belt, and then I'll scan through. I'll try to pick out the ones that I have to respond to. Clients, of course, come first. And if it's 5 o'clock and I haven't gotten to that email, it's going to fall right off the conveyor belt because I'm not going to be able to get to it tomorrow. It's over. It's done. So a call, I can usually express the ideas and get the content much quicker than through emails. I've sat through conversations that have taken 10 emails and I've just stopped and called the person. So it just seems, on one hand, yes, email is very efficient. You can put documents in there and all those things. And if it's a simple idea to convey, email is the best. But if there's a conversation that needs to be had and ideas exchanged back and forth till you get to a solution, then for me, a phone call is much better.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to another section about career. And Bill, this first one's for you. Why did you get into this field, and what do you like most about your job? And I'm going to encourage Jeff and Dean to comment on this as well.
Okay, honestly, when I got out of the military, I didn't know this field, this career existed. I basically stumbled into it while responding to ads for all things related to engineering or maintenance. I knew I wanted to get into something in that field. I think it worked out okay. The variety of work for me is what makes it interesting. We do literally different things every day. You never come to work knowing what you're going to do. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But just a variety of work. We're not doing the same routine thing every day. We're responding to tenant complaints or electrical problems, just a variety of things.
So for me, I got involved with the industry sort of in a roundabout way as well. I was trained as a aquatic biologist. So the transition from that to being a chief engineer was long and twisted, but but that brings me to a situation where Bill and I were talking about before we got started, and that is purposely training young people to be building engineers. So if we all fall into it by mistake, that leaves a void in a pool of trained engineers. So I think we as engineering leaders need to try to figure out how to encourage young folks to not just fall into that trap, but plan for a great career in engineering.
Jeff, you want to comment?
I've been doing this since I was 16 years old, and I realized when I was a pretty young kid I loved to take things apart. Not always successful putting them back together, but took them apart. Later on, I could fix a few things that I think my dad ultimately fixed for me, but I thought I fixed them. But I just happened to fall into the right group of people that encouraged me to try out for this engineering position, and I did, and started going to some classes and school, and I've been doing it ever since.
I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. My wife, this goes back in the 80s, my wife worked for a property management company at the time, and I was an auto mechanic in my previous life, and I was really getting tired of not being able to have clean hands with working on cars. So I heard about this building engineer position, and I decided to try out, and the rest is history, and I've enjoyed it ever since. I think the things that are great about the job is the variety, and every day is totally different. And the job security, because buildings don't go away and they need maintenance. So it's a very good thing. Now we move on to the next one. Jeff, how can we attract more people like you to the industry? That's the way it's worded. And what expertise is most valuable to you if other expertise can be trained?
Well, like Dean said, it's an industry that not a lot of people understand or know about. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody and they said, "What do you do?" And I tell them what I do, and they look over at these buildings and they go, "Oh yeah, I guess somebody does have to take care of them." I mean, they really, really don't understand. And this has been a real passionate thing for me over the years, is to try to figure out how to bring young people into our industry. And I'm a part of a few colleges and go to job fairs. And I always find it really interesting. First of all, we had a pretty boring booth. There's a Renton Votech puts on a class that you can take for engineering, get certified. And we'd sit there with kind of a boring table compared to everybody else at the job fair. And these kids would just walk by and they'd look over at our table and then they'd walk away. I think, I gotta go figure out why these kids are just looking at us like, like us, So I went out in the aisle, and as they were coming by, I said, "Hey, do you like taking things apart?" "Oh yeah, I like taking things apart." I said, "Well, that's what we do. Do you work with computers?" That's all these young kids want to know. Do you work with computers? And so just step back a little bit. A lot of people in our industry, I've talked to many engineers over the years, a lot of people in our industry knows about engineering because their grandpa, their dad, their neighbor, somebody told them about it. That is few and far between anymore. You talk to young kids and you say, "What does your dad do?" It's usually technology. So we got Johnson Control to donate some computers for us, and we put on some really cool stuff on the computer. They started looking at us. "Oh, you guys do programming?" "Oh yeah, man." Because you got to get them over to your table, and you got to have the dialogue with them. And I mean, that's really the thing, is we've got to bring young people into this. There's a lot of us guys that are old now, and we're going to retire one of these days. And there's a handful of young people wanting to get into this business. So every chance I get, I talk about it. It's a great industry. There's a lot of young kids out there that are floundering. This would be it. This would be the job to get into. So always out there pushing that, always a big part of that. I think I had a thought and it went somewhere else. What was the last part of that question?
Let's see, what expertise is most valuable to you if other expertise can be trained?
So that's the big thing, right? Sitting down, talking to somebody, and determining whether they have a future in the industry or not. Well, first of all, you find out if they're mechanically inclined. You can do that pretty easily. Doesn't take much. Hand them a screwdriver, hand them pliers, have them take something apart. I can tell you really quickly whether they are mechanically inclined. That stuff you can teach if they're mechanically inclined. We can teach them to fix anything, right?
Yep.
Any kind of equipment we have, they can figure that out. The question really becomes, will they have the passion for it? Do they really want to do it? Because that's going to make a great chief engineer eventually. And there's people out there, young people out there that want to make those steps. And you see right away they have that passion. And like always, you have to have a personality. You have to be able to communicate with people. You can't just be in the engine room, no offense, Bill.
Right.
In the engine room in the ship, where you never were exposed to much but engines, Those days are gone. Boiler mechanics, all that, those days are gone. We're out, we're in the public, and the public is who we have to deal with and be exposed to. So you find somebody like that, you can teach them all the rest. You can teach anybody anything. Personality is a tough one, and I know that's a very loose word, so always looking for people that a light bulb goes on and you can kind of see it in their head when you talk to them about engineering.
And I think one of the traits to look for is curiosity as well. When I go into a building, I just want to know about how everything works, and I would want an engineer to be able to tell me, how does the roof drain? Where does the water go? How do we heat and cool? All those things are just great traits for engineer, curiosity. And I think in looking for new blood, one of the best sources these days, I think, is military. So to find a way to connect with those folks that are coming out of the military, who have a lot of these types of skills and more, is a great resource as well.
I'll have to expand on that. Thanks for bringing that up, Dean. Cynthia Putnam in the audience, Bill and I attended a meeting yesterday with about 20 other people, BOMA members, and dealing with that exact same thing and what to do about helping find building engineers and specifically reaching out to the military folks and veterans. So we're going to be forming task forces, if I can pronounce that correct, to make things happen there, because there is a huge shortage of engineers currently, and we'll do what we can about it. Next question, Bill, you got to be honest now. Would you choose the same career path today?
Well, it's kind of a tough question. I've been doing it for 20 years, so at this point, I don't know what else I would be doing. Too late to shift now, right?
Yeah.
But I don't regret the choice. Like I said, the job is interesting. There's a variety of things we do, and I've never regretted falling into it. So I'd have to say yes, I'd probably do the same thing.
Kind of add to that a little bit. I had a long path to where I'm at right now, and knowing what I know now, I think I would pursue work as a chief engineer in a more formal manner from the get-go.
We all get there eventually, I guess. Jeff, what do you think?
Yes.
Yes, there we go. Okay, Jeff, next one's for you. Where do new building engineers find training most helpful? For example, more vendors from BOMA, more vendors, what is this? More from vendors or BOMA classes, or from a mentor within their company? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think this is a real opportunity for a lot of people. There's engineers typically need to be exposed to the item that they're trying to fix. So if you were young, when you were young, you learned theory. That's the time to learn theory, because as you get older, you know everything and you don't need that theory. But that's really the baseline. But they need tangible stuff. So some of the classes that we send our engineers to that are more touchy-feely, getting up, working on a heat pump, that's what speaks to a lot of engineers, right? They like things. They like to fix things. Talking about them in a classroom style doesn't always work for our engineers. So we're always looking for classes like that. BOC's got classes that are great classes. The BOMA, there's outside classes that you can spend a little bit more, but ultimately, probably the best source of education is in the building, working side by side with another engineer that has the experience. That mentoring is invaluable. In a classroom setting, you don't always ask the dumb question, right? You hope somebody else asks it, so you kind of sit back, wait, see what happens, and sometimes it never gets answered. A mentor, they can say, I don't get it. I know you've shown me how to put gauges on this thing twice, but I just don't get it. And so that mentoring is very valuable. And it is the hardest thing to convince owners and managers that you need young people to get into the industry, you need to give them time to learn on the job and mentor them. And that takes, nobody wants to do that anymore. So I encourage all those out there, of you out there, that have properties to try to put together a junior program internally and bring young people in and dedicate somebody to them and be their mentor, because that's how we're going to move this forward. And those people are great. I can't tell you how many people I have that are learning so much just on the job. But Renton Votech has a great engineering program. Also, the other guy. Anyway, they're all great classes. So.
Okay, Bill, it's a somewhat related question. What's the best way for me to learn more about building systems?
I think this one came from the property management group. So I would say the best way for you to learn about your building is to ask your engineers to show them something about their jobs. A junior level engineer might want to show you the mechanical room they're responsible for, or the latest motor he replaced, or some exhaust fan hidden away deep in the bowels of the building no one else knows about. More senior engineers could take you on a tour of the mechanical or electrical areas, explain the HVAC systems in the building. All of us in the field, hopefully, we take pride in our buildings, and we kind of like it when people ask us, how does this work, or can you go take us and show us this? So I would say just grab onto an engineer and have them take you and show you if you have a question about anything in your building.
Thank you, Bill. Jeff, this one's for you. In your experience, what traits have successful managers and chief engineers had in common?
I think the interest in wanting to be there, and this goes maybe a little bit deeper, and some of you might not totally understand it, but you really have to like people. And there's a lot of people that don't like people. And the minute you find out they don't like people, you find out what the reason they are not moving forward. And so when I find somebody that likes people, I can tell they like to be with people and talk to people. That to me is, that's what you move off of. That's where you build everything else. But passion for the job. I've had the privilege of working with some great property managers that love what they're doing, wake up every morning and are glad they're there. And so that combination with me and them works awesome. But it tends to be a little bit more positive when you like people. So those complaints that come in, they're hard to call them complaints. They have an issue, and we're going to figure out what their issue is. Call them complaints, you can end up venting a lot. So definitely a person that likes people. It's, I guess, what makes the world go around, right?
Okay, Bill and Dean, do you have anything to add?
Just a couple things. I think one thing that makes a great building engineer, besides attitude and curiosity that I mentioned before, is ownership. To consider that building their responsibility and take pride in that building working as efficiently as possible. That's great to see. And also a tenacity to get that thing repaired, get the energy bill reduced, and do it all in a friendly, congenial manner that makes the tenants feel good when Joe shows up, because they know that it's going to be fixed now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean. Bill, this is the last question for the career-related category. What is the best way to get young people started in their careers if they are interested in a building engineer position?
Yeah, as I think we've discussed, this is a huge task in front of us. It's getting increasingly difficult to attract young folks into any of the mechanical trades. We look for those that have some mechanical aptitude, like working on their cars, doing light HVAC work at apartments or residential complexes. That's a good source for us. But trying to make them just aware of our career is a big challenge. As Scott mentioned, BOMA is working on developing ways we can attend job fairs. We've discussed having job shadowing, where we find some interested young folks and just have them tail around an engineer for a day and see what we do, helping incentivize some of the training that we've been talking about. We're attempting to contact veterans groups to make them aware of the opportunities. We've got a few leads there that we're pursuing. And filling the positions will likely become even harder over the next few years with several new buildings coming up here in Seattle. They've all got to have engineers, and there's a limited number of us right now. So if any of you, vendors, property managers, I think if you have any ideas, pass them along to BOMA, because we are actively concerned about this and trying to come up with solutions.
Okay, thank you, Bill. There's a kind of a last couple of questions we have here. This is a general question to all of you folks. What are your energy upgrade goals in 2014 and within the next 2 years? The other part of the question is, how do you plan on meeting these expectations, for example, through vendors, internal researching, or reaching out to trusted partners within the industry? And Jeff, if you want to start.
Sure. These kind of things always depend on ownership and what their goals are. So it's always important to understand what they're striving to do, whether they're a short-term holder, long-term holder. All that plays into what you're willing to do. One of the targets that we do in my company is we set a 5% decrease every year. We try to outline early on where we're going to get that, but that doesn't always happen right away, depending on when we're working on our budgets and when we kind of get them solidified and approved. But then we're always looking for ways to get that 5%, and we've been very successful at doing that for the last 5 years. So I think that's part of it, is just challenging yourself to say, my budget's going to have that 5% decrease, and I've got to meet that. Otherwise, every quarter or every month, I'm going to be meeting with the owner and going, yeah, didn't quite get it. Sorry, you won't approve any projects. So be realistic about that. But ours is 5%, and we don't have any large projects planned for this year. We're working on a couple for next year. One of the great things about being in a little bit older building is you end up with end-of-life equipment. Sometimes when you have that end-of-life equipment and you can kind of push the repair or the replace along with something more efficient. So we're always looking at that as in some of our buildings that are older.
Good, Dean.
We have a similar goal for energy savings, between 3 to 5%, depending on the age of the building. Usually the older buildings we can be more effective with. And what we try to do is tie our major energy projects in with end-of-life type of situations where we have a building with 20-year-old heat pumps and we have to replace them. And we then ask the vendors to let us know what the latest and greatest is, the most efficient equipment, how to run it more efficiently. We also talk to leadership, not just about simple payback, but net present value and future cash flow. Especially with healthcare, we just don't know exactly where that's going to end up and where that's going to go. So to be able to promise some good future or improved future cash flow is a big part of our strategies.
Bill?
Basically, for us, we continue what we've been doing. We've done a lot of the easy projects, the speed drive installations that were no-brainers. Those got done early on. So now it's getting a little tougher sometimes. We're doing lighting upgrades, which that technology just continually evolves. I've been in the middle of a project, and the lights we spec become obsolete because the manufacturers stopped making those and they're making a newer model. So that's ongoing. Reviewing set points, operating schedules for all of your equipment. As the guys mentioned, replacing older equipment with more energy efficient. I mean, we've got some units that have been in buildings for 20 years, so obviously some room for improvement there. It's being achieved through a combination of trying to train our staff, making them more aware, and then also engaging outside consultants and contractors to let us know what technologies are available. It goes back to the RFP process. If I spec a chiller or a piece of gear, go ahead and give me a price for that, but say, hey, have you heard of this, this great technologies, and there might be some options.
Okay, thank you very much. In the time we have left, I do have a couple of more questions I can throw out there, but I do want to give you a chance to do some Q&A. So does anybody have any questions from the audience? We'd be glad to take them at this time. Oh, hello, Cynthia, there you go. Let me get the microphone over to you. Hang on.
So I had a follow-on question for you, Jeff, based on the remarks you made about mentoring and mentoring on the job. You bring in junior people and you link them up with someone who's more senior. I'm just curious about the senior folks. Do you have to be selective about who would serve as a good mentor? Does everybody want to be a mentor? And how do you kind of identify those folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. You definitely need the right mentor to be able to work with someone so that they feel comfortable. So usually it's our people we've kind of marked as future, they want to move kind of up the ranks. And so they just need that. Engineers don't often get that exposure to mentoring someone or kind of being in charge of someone. Usually it's working with a vendor or working with each other. So we try to expose them to how well they do, kind of having an employee, if you will, under them, and how they can achieve success with that employee. And it helps them out, because some people understand this really isn't it for me, and we say, well, this is what it's about. So.
We have a question over here.
Okay.
So I apologize if I missed this because I showed up a few minutes late, but you guys have said how much you care about your building, you love your job, everything else. What kind of frustrations do you guys have on a daily basis outside of dealing with your specific building?
Regulations.
Regulations. So there's all kinds of things that are out of our control. We talked early on, you might have missed the electrical 07 discussion, and that becomes frustrating in many cases.
And expensive.
Right. So things like that can put a damper on things.
Yeah, I think definitely L&I, just regulations, just things we have to do. The more I learn about what you need to do, the more confused I get. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, the list that just keeps showing up of what we should be doing. And the first thing I ask is, are these guys doing it? And I find out whether they're doing it or not. But trying to keep up with all of that is, on every aspect of your building is probably very frustrating. And so we're always looking for partners to kind of work through those with us.
Bill, can you comment on the fire department changes? Yeah, just as far as regulations go. Or maybe Jeff. Jeff, could you comment on fire department regs too? Because those are changing all the time.
Yeah, certainly fire department regulations are constantly changing. Unfortunately, I don't think the technology in the fire department or the confidence testing group is moving at the speed that we are. And so we're still doing paper copies of things, and then, I mean, literally, we do a test, we fix the problem, and then I get notified 3 months later because they finally looked at the confidence testing to tell me that I need to get this item fixed. And I'm like, you need to read the next sheet. And so I, again, spent a lot of time working through a system that I just don't enjoy. You know, it's not the greatest part of my job, the regulation side.
Just building on that, a lot of the changes to regulations, we don't even know they're in the works until we get notified that, hey, this passed a year ago, you've got to start doing this. And if it had been something we knew was coming, we could budget for it, we could plan for it. So those type of surprises, completely out of our control. I don't know the solution to it. We hear rumors about changes with the fire department regulations, but we never hear from the fire department. We usually hear it through a vendor or something that says, hey, they're talking about doing this. So I don't have a solution for that, but it is ever changing. And then contractors should keep in mind that, like when we do our RFPs, and we talked about deferred maintenance earlier, we ultimately always report to owners, and it's their money. So we may have a project that we know it makes absolute sense to do. It's, you know, we got to do it. If the owners want to buy new lobby furniture, though, they look at those dollars and they say, well, you can defer it. The classic is the roof that needs to be replaced. The question is it leaking? Well, not yet, but you know, it's worn out, and then that gets deferred. So that's a frustration we deal with. But again, it's just part of the job. We have to submit our best shot, and if it doesn't get approved, we move on.
And I'll just comment real fast. The only really other frustrating thing is when you're working with your asset manager and they say, how much is that going to cost? And you throw out a number, biggest mistake. Don't ever throw out a number, because they will hold you to that. And then they'll wonder when you finally get your bids in that why you're not there. So I refrain from it, even though they pound me. So add a lot to it. You just add a lot to it.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Alrighty, well, I think we're at the end here. I just want to thank you all for coming. I hope you found a lot of good information here and got to know what a building engineer does with most of his time. And I want to thank the vendors. We had the Raffin Company, McDonald Miller, and Shearer Painting, and HK Elevator. Thanks for making this possible. And Christine, I wonder if you want to say a few words about the next Power Hour. Do you have information about that? Or? Okay. Thank you again.
And thank you so much for him, too. You did a great job. So yes, we have a Power Hour coming up in February, and it's world-class service. And you can register online today. Registration's open. And we also have Engineer Skills Hour that are also coming up, which are great power hours. They occur during the lunch hour from 12 to 1, usually in the BOMA office. So keep an eye out for those, and those will be posted on our website under bomaseattle.org/education. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. You guys did a wonderful job.
Fine job, Bill. Good job, babe.
Good meeting you, Jeff.
Didn't even pass out.
Thanks so much.